Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. The prison was dim and heavy with the scent of damp stone. Joseph sat in a corner, the faint light from a small barred window tracing the lines of his thoughtful face. Years had passed since his brothers sold him into slavery, and the path from Potiphar's household to this prison had been winding and cruel. Yet even in these shadows, Joseph carried a quiet confidence that his life was held within the hands of God. Two of Pharaoh's servants, the cupbearer and the baker, had once shared this same prison with him. They each had troubling dreams, and Joseph had been the one to interpret them, foretelling the cupbearer's restoration and the baker's execution. The predictions had unfolded exactly as Joseph had said. Before the cupbearer was released, Joseph had pleaded with him to remember his name before Pharaoh. But 2 years had passed, and Joseph had been left forgotten in the dungeon. One sweltering night in Pharaoh's palace, the most powerful man in Egypt awoke in a cold sweat. The dream had been vivid and unsettling. He lay in bed, his breathing heavy, as he tried to steady his mind. In the vision, he had been standing by the Nile, its waters calm and gleaming under the sun. From the river emerged 7 cows, sleek and fat, their hides shining with health. They grazed peacefully on the lush banks. But then, from the same river, 7 other cows came forth, gaunt and ugly, their ribs showing, eyes hollow. The thin cows approached the fat ones, and, to Pharaoh's horror, devoured them entirely. Yet even after consuming them, the thin cows looked just as skeletal as before. Pharaoh woke and tried to shake the image from his mind. He drifted back to sleep, only to dream again. This time, he saw 7 ears of grain, plump and golden, growing on a single stalk. Behind them grew 7 thin ears, scorched by the east wind. The withered ears swallowed the full ones, leaving nothing of their former beauty. Pharaoh awoke again, disturbed to the core. The next morning, the king summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Servants scurried through the palace corridors, delivering the urgent summons. One by one, the learned men arrived, their robes sweeping the floor, their faces set in solemn dignity. Pharaoh recounted his dreams in detail, his voice sharp with unease. The wise men listened, stroking their beards and exchanging glances, but no one could offer an explanation that satisfied him. Frustration boiled within Pharaoh's heart. His dreams felt more than mere nighttime illusions. They carried a weight, a warning perhaps, but its meaning lay beyond his grasp. His court remained silent, their wisdom failing in the face of the mystery. It was then that the chief cupbearer, standing quietly among the servants, felt a jolt of memory. The face of a young Hebrew prisoner flashed in his mind, the man who had once interpreted his dream with perfect accuracy. The cupbearer hesitated, knowing how easily Pharaoh's anger could be kindled, but then stepped forward and bowed. "My lord Pharaoh," the cupbearer began carefully, "today I am reminded of my shortcomings. 2 years ago, when you were angry with your servants, you placed me and the chief baker into the custody of the captain of the guard. While we were there, we each had a dream the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. There was with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the meaning of his dream. And just as he interpreted them to us, so it happened. I was restored to my position, and the other man was hanged." Pharaoh's eyes narrowed with interest. A Hebrew slave who could interpret dreams was an unusual figure in Egypt's courts. Without delay, he commanded his servants, "Bring him to me at once." In the depths of the prison, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed against the walls. Joseph was summoned and told to prepare himself to stand before Pharaoh. He was given clean garments, his beard was trimmed, and the grime of years in prison was washed away. As he stepped out into the sunlight for the first time in so long, the air felt like a promise. Joseph was led into the grand hall of Pharaoh's palace. Golden columns lined the chamber, and the throne stood elevated above the gathering, carved with symbols of power. The king sat there, his presence as commanding as the desert sun. Servants and guards lined the walls, their eyes fixed on the newcomer. Pharaoh studied Joseph for a long moment before speaking. "I have had a dream," he said, his voice deep and deliberate. "No one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph met Pharaoh's gaze, his voice calm but firm. "I cannot do it," he replied, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." The court fell silent at his words. It was a bold statement to make before Egypt's king, an admission of personal inability and a declaration of faith in a foreign god. But Pharaoh, intrigued, gestured for him to proceed. Pharaoh leaned forward on his throne, his eyes locked on Joseph. In the hushed stillness of the hall, he began to recount every detail of his dreams. His voice carried the weight of someone seeking truth, every word deliberate and pressing. "In my dream," Pharaoh said, "I was standing on the bank of the Nile. Out of the river came 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly, the worst in all of Egypt. The thin cows ate up the 7 fat cows that had come first. But even after they had eaten them, no one could tell they had done so. They looked just as thin as before. Then I woke. In my second dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin, scorched by the east wind. The thin heads swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none could explain it to me. Joseph listened attentively, his eyes steady, his posture composed. When Pharaoh finished speaking, Joseph's expression softened, and he spoke with quiet authority. The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. Joseph began, God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and he will do it soon. The air in the throne room seemed to grow heavier. Courtiers shifted uneasily at the thought of years of hunger that could devour the prosperity of Egypt. Pharaoh's brow furrowed, his mind already turning over the possibilities. Joseph's voice grew more purposeful. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the land may not be ruined by the famine. Whispers rippled through the hall. The logic was undeniable, the plan practical and clear. It was more than an interpretation, it was a solution. Pharaoh's eyes remained fixed on Joseph, the young Hebrew who had just spoken with the confidence of someone entrusted with divine insight. Pharaoh turned to his officials. Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? His voice echoed off the golden walls, and the courtiers glanced at one another, none daring to oppose the king's growing conviction. Pharaoh rose from his throne and descended the steps until he stood before Joseph. His decision was made. Since God has made all this known to you, he declared, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Gasps filled the room. In one moment, the prisoner had been transformed into the most powerful man in Egypt after Pharaoh himself. The guards removed Joseph's prison chains, and a servant stepped forward carrying fine linen garments. Joseph's hands were clothed in gold rings, and Pharaoh placed a signet ring from his own hand onto Joseph's finger, a symbol of authority. Pharaoh then gave Joseph a new name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and arranged his marriage to Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Chariots rolled forward, and Joseph was paraded through the streets of Egypt, with men calling out before him, "Make way." Wherever he went, the people bowed in respect, their voices rising in celebration. Joseph's heart swelled with gratitude, but he did not forget the source of his wisdom. The God who had been with him in the pit, in slavery, and in prison, had now lifted him to a position beyond his imagination. He was 29 years old, and the years ahead would prove the truth of his interpretation. The years of plenty began just as Joseph had predicted. The fields of Egypt flourished with an abundance unlike any before. Granaries overflowed with wheat, and storehouses were filled with the fruits of the land. Under Joseph's supervision, the government collected 1/5 of every harvest and secured it carefully. His wisdom and foresight earned him respect and admiration, even from those who had once doubted him. As the 7th year approached, whispers of an impending famine grew louder. Joseph's plan was set in motion. The reserves were ready, and the people were prepared. When the famine finally struck, it swept across the region with devastating force. Neighboring countries suffered, but Egypt endured. Its people turned to Joseph, trusting his leadership and provision. But Joseph's role went beyond mere administration. His story was a testimony to God's faithfulness, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, divine purpose remains. His rise from prisoner to governor was not just a matter of chance or politics, but a fulfillment of a promise whispered long ago in dreams. Years later, Joseph's brothers, the very men who had sold him into slavery, journeyed to Egypt seeking grain to survive the famine. They did not recognize the powerful man before them, but Joseph saw them clearly. This moment of reunion and forgiveness would test the heart that had been forged in trials. Joseph's interpretations had saved a nation. His faith had carried him through betrayal, rejection, and hardship. His story continues to inspire, reminding us that even when circumstances seem bleak, trust in God's plan can bring redemption and hope.